Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2. I kind of want to. I do not have the script ready.
What did James do? Oh, they did talk to some woman who wasn't, very close to the mountains, I guess, but they talked to some woman who was like, I'm not leaving my house. That's an evacuation order.
Hey, Paul, this is Ken. I just want to make sure you saw my signal from Rock Hill.
Yeah. So that gets out.
All righty, you got audio too?
Guys, y'all good? Good. Katie?
Check, 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 check. Check, check. Mic check. Okay, cool. All right, man. All right.
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here this afternoon with us. With me today, I've got Deputy City Manager Jimmy Bagley, and we'll be happy to take questions after just a quick, brief statement. We're continuing to work diligently to address the ramifications of Hurricane Helene. Between 5 to 7 inches of rain fell across the city of Rock Hill, and we had wind gusts as high as 43 miles per hour. Well, clearly, we had some flooding, downed trees, and power outages, and as of 2 o'clock this afternoon, there are approximately 3,800 customers without power. This morning, about 5-6 hours ago, there were 19,000 customers without power. So we feel good about what we've done so far, thanks to the hard work of our employees, but still a long ways to go. Our crews continue to clear roadways and work any necessary maintenance on our water and sewer plants, lines, and pump stations. Our police and fire personnel have been working tirelessly to ensure everyone's safety. Many other city staff are working behind the scenes to support personnel in the field, and to all of them, to each of these employees and others that are working so hard, I just want to thank you and just tell you how grateful we are for your hard work. We appreciate your patience as our crews continue to respond to these issues and recognizing that safety is paramount, especially in restoring power and clearing down trees. We seek to restore this power. As we seek to restore this power, there are chances that additional power outages are possible. If you have a power outage, please know the system will know that the power is out at your house, but you can check that by checking out our website, cityofrockhill.com/outage, but call in as well if need be. Although the worst of the flood watch and tropical weather events are past us geographically, utility crews may have to periodically stand down to safety concerns. That being said, we'll continue to work as quickly as possible and as conditions allow. Due to the known damage or the extent of the damage, we expect full restoration to still take a couple days. Crews from Alabama are en route and will be here to help overnight. And we're continue getting reports of additional trees falling, causing more down power lines. We expect that to continue for a while. Please call us at 803-329-5500, and we'll deploy crews if you see a tree down or a power line down. Be very cautious in trying to clean up any limbs or debris, as they may contain power lines. You cannot cut a tree if a power line is near it. You cannot pick up trash around a power line. That's not a good idea. Please don't even attempt that. Be very cautious in trying to clean up this debris, and due to a high volume of calls, you may get a busy signal if you're calling in to report any of this. And if that is the case, please be patient with us and try again. If you do have any brush or limbs that need to be cleared, you can put them on the curb, and the crews will come pick them up over the next week. We encourage everyone. We encourage you to submit a work order if you can, but we'll get there, we promise. As always, if you were in an emergency, call 911. I want to personally thank you for everyone's patience as we navigate this. We have a very good city, and people have been very encouraging and very looking out for their neighbor as the calls and texts and emails I've received. And I want to encourage you to continue to do that. If you can keep from going out tonight and leaving your neighborhood, please do. The last thing we need is for our police and fire to have to come respond to a situation that's caused because we're not being careful during these times. And please continue to look out for your neighbors. With that in mind, we're happy to take any questions you might have.
You said crews are coming from Alabama. When was the decision made to kind of reach out to them, or how did that work?
I'll let Jimmy take that question.
Well, I'm the mutual aid coordinator for the state of South Carolina, so that helps. But we've been monitoring the storm actually all week, and many of the crews in Florida, as well as North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, are all in the same situation we are. This storm was bigger than most that we've seen, so it's hard to think that Santee Cooper and the coast also had a lot of issues because we had so much damage inland. But we had to reach past all of those, and Alabama was the next closest group that had availability. So we reached out to them probably around 8 o'clock this morning. We've been coordinating getting crews in. We do have 5 crews coming up from Santee Cooper around the Mott's Corner area today as well, and the Alabama crews will be here later tonight as the mayor indicated. So you don't want to bring your crews in too early. They don't want to leave because they don't know where the damage is going to be either, and you put them in harm's way if they're in the middle of the storm. So as soon as we realized that everybody was impacted, we went ahead and called them and started heading this way.
Sounds good. Mayor, you mentioned earlier that there were about 19,000 customers without power. Obviously, that number is much lower now. Can you tell me just about the work that went into doing that and how efficient it sounds that it was?
Well, sure. Well, I'll tell you some really good facts. We all love facts. About 60% of our electric system is underground now, and that's come from hard work by Jimmy and his team and money set aside by council for the last 20 years. When you've got that much of your system underground, once you can get the poles that did go down back up, you can affect a lot of houses in a very short amount of time. So spending the money as our utility department has for so long has better prepared us for days like this. My hope is we'll continue to invest in going underground for years to come, and our council will support that. And, you know, it's a great number to say we've gone from 19,000 to 3,800 in about 5 or 6 hours. But those last 3,800 are the hardest, right? They're at the end of a line, or they're, you know, in isolated areas, or they're in yards where you can't get your truck in that has the new pole. So you got to have 5 or 6 guys, employees, men and women, put it on their shoulder, carry it to the back of the yard, dig it out, take the old one out, and put the new one in. So we're in the hard part now. Thankfully, we got people coming from out of town with fresh backs. Our guys have been working very hard. We're always proud of them. And as you know, this spring we had another event like this, and it just continues to show that that tagline the city has of being always on isn't something written on paper. It's a way they do business.
And the last question for you. I know Rock Hill, earlier this year there have been some bad storms. Obviously, everyone remembers that hailstorm. How does this one compare to some of the damage we've seen?
Well, we don't know yet. We'll see how the damage plays out from an economic figure. This one's more widespread in the city. That one was more localized, but that one was very powerful because it was so localized and just absolutely devastating. It was sort of like an impact of a Hugo, but on a smaller area, footprint. So that was unique. That was something that hopefully we won't be anywhere near. But there are certain neighborhoods in Rock Hill where we know of 15 trees being down. Tree knocking someone down and having to go to the hospital. Thankfully, to this point, no fatalities. I think it would be sort of out of left field to see a fatality come from this storm as of now, and I'm going to knock on wood when I say that, of course. But it really is, I think, a testament to the hard work of our city employees, the vision of our management team and our council to continuing to invest in our utility system, modernizing it, preparing the loop so if one line goes down, it's looped so that others can pull in with a blink of an eye. It's where AI comes in and where we've been fortunate because of that. So we're better situated, but still some work to go. Sure.
One question for you. Following the aftermath of the storm here in April that some people are still recovering from, how did that impact the preparation phase for this storm here?
Well, there's some difficulties that thankfully we were able to get over. You know, there were so many poles that were snapped and had to be replaced, so it depleted our storage, and having enough poles for the next event thankfully, thanks to Jimmy's management and the team that's there, they had replenished, so we're not short on supplies. You know, we're a little bit better prepared for instances because of what happened in the spring, like we are now. It's sort of fresh in everyone's mind. But I just have to say, this isn't just our line crews. Our PRT folks, our fire department folks, our police officers, they're all out in the community as well because of the things they did in the spring and know sort of how to pick the ball up and run with it as well. We don't want to go through another one. But I'll tell you, I've been mayor for 7 years, and we have something every so often these days, whether it be COVID, whether it be a hurricane coming through like we did back in 18 or 19, the microburst. It just seems like these are more common than we used to see them coming. And when they do come, they're much more powerful, it seems to me, than they were before. And so that's a great question. How do we prepare for, you know, what might be coming? My hope is with the damage to the state of South Carolina, as great as it is as a whole, we will see some federal funds to come to our state. And I know our city, we were talking about this before, we're going to stop and look at those funds that come in to reimburse us on things and make sure we're thinking about what we might need to think about down the road and start planning in that regard.
I was gonna ask about that. What type of assistance are you anticipating here following? Because we saw a ton of damage, especially, really all over. So what kind of help or assistance are you anticipating here?
Jimmy, you want to take that, or I'll be happy to try.
You know, a lot of it really just depends on what happened in the rest of the state. As was mentioned earlier, the storm we had back in April was very localized just to some communities in Rock Hill. And the test for that at the time was $9.3 million, and you had to have at least 3 houses that were totaled. We didn't quite meet those guidelines to get funding that we were hoping to get. Once you have multiple counties involved, that threshold becomes numbers like 10 million, which seems kind of strange. But if you can get $10 million over all the 46 counties, then you start meeting some different criteria. So I think you'll probably have that sort of damage, and they'll look at public infrastructure, whether it's buildings, vehicles damaged from this, the amount of hours that are worked, and households too. So if there were homes either destroyed or damaged, all that goes into play. So FEMA will be part of it. The governor did declare a disaster. That's one step that'll help. So now that we have all of those pieces put in place, it'll really just now be adding all that up to see what the thresholds are and how much allocation maybe can be requested to the president to bring back to the state of South Carolina.
I wanted to ask, you kind of mentioned it earlier, that one specific rescue. I think a lot of people have seen that circulating online. Could you speak to what went down with that, any, or?
The tree?
Yeah, with the tree.
Yeah, certainly I wasn't there. I just know a tree went down and one of our beloved people of our community is in the hospital. I wouldn't want to speculate as to what her medical condition is, of course, but I think she's going to be fine in the long run. Yeah.
Just kind of attribute the work to the rescuers and talk about what they did.
Yeah, well, they were there. Do you have any specific facts?
Well, there are actually 2 incidences. One is a lady that was hit by a falling tree from her neighbor's property. She went to the hospital. I think she has a broken arm. I haven't heard back, but we know about that one, and we didn't do any assist. The husband, fortunately, was able to secure her from the tree and able to take her to the hospital. The one that happened earlier this morning was actually in the county, but it's kind of one of those pockets in the city, and that's one that fell on a house. And from what I understand, there were multiple people that needed to be evacuated, really extricated from the home. And one report indicated that somebody might have been under the tree, so I'm not sure if they were in the house when that happened or not. The county did call for the city's assistance, so under our mutual aid guidelines, we did assist with fire truck and police, so we were able to help in that rescue operation. But I've not seen the final outcome of who all was involved in that either.
Appreciate it, thank you.
What that says about Rock Hill, how y'all prepare and how y'all kind of go out there and get the job done as far as the other municipalities calling you in, what that says about Rock Hill.
Yes, sir. We do have mutual aid agreements with the county as well as with a lot of other cities. So if they call and ask for assistance, we'll invoke that agreement and certainly go try to do the best we can depending on what type they need, whether it's public works or utilities or even just fire and police. So we do have a lot of those agreements in place, and that's what they're for, times of need. And as the mayor said, Rock Hill's always on. So we're here to share and help and do whatever we can. We don't overstep our boundaries and just assume it's our role, so we don't go in and start taking over somebody else's job. But if they call, we certainly are glad to try to help if we can.
One last thing, just because we're talking about trees, Until 7 o'clock today, we have, from the National Weather Service, expectation of 15 to 20 mile an hour sustained winds and gusts of 35 to 40 miles per hour. Just for context, a bucket truck can't be up at 35 miles per hour, so our guys working on lines can't get up when we have those big gusts in the area. And these are, the sustained winds and the gusts are enough to bring another tree down. That's why it's very important for everybody to stay inside, be safe.
Thank you very much.
Sure. Thank you all.
It's Jimmy Bagley,
Spell it.
Jimmy, Bagley, Bagley.
Know that City Cooper has a very extensive electric transmission system throughout the state. It's what enables us to serve municipalities and mostly the cooperatives in the state. That has been the most impacted by this storm. So we have had 48 transmission lines impacted, and that is about 116 delivery points to municipals and cooperatives across the state. As of noon today, we've restored service to half of those points, so we're down to about 58 points that are left. Our priority, first and foremost, is to operate safely, but secondly, it's to stabilize the transmission grid by working first on the highest voltage lines and then move down the line, very similar to what Keller was talking about. We are continuing to assess the damage on the system, but we know that we have 11 broken structures. We have 4 helicopters in the air. 2 of those are equipped with the long saws that Keller talked about so that we can immediately get the trees off the line and begin restoring service as quickly as possible. Now, Mike Callahan mentioned this is a different hurricane than what we've experienced. Normally, Santee Cooper's territory in Horry, Georgetown, and Berkeley County is directly affected because it comes off of the Atlantic. That was not the case this time. So our distribution business was not significantly impacted. Total of 6,200 customers, all but 80 of those have been restored. So again, like everyone else that's been up here, please be careful out there, stay away from power lines, and if you see a down power line, please give us a call. Thank you.
Thank you, Jimmy Stevens. President and CEO Rob Hochstetler of Central Electric Power Co-op.
Thank you, Governor. Rob Hochstetler, representing the 19 electric cooperatives of South Carolina. The electric co-ops were hit extremely hard by this morning's storm. The restoration process really is going to take place across a large swath of South Carolina. It's going to take days, perhaps well into next week. It is not hours. Hurricanes like Helene, Hurricane Helene knocked out power to 425,000 electric cooperative consumers. That's just less than half. As of about an hour ago, last time I checked, about 380,000 of those consumers are still without power. This storm snapped several hundred poles, yanked down lines, and damaged not just distribution systems, but as Jimmy and Keller said, the transmission lines and other critical infrastructure. The transmission lines are what I like to think of as the interstate system delivering power. As a result, dozens of substations, delivery points that Jimmy calls them, those are like the exits off of the interstate, are without power and out of commission. And so we've got to get the interstate, the transmission system running, and then the delivery points back up. For some of our co-ops, particularly those in the upstate and along South Carolina's western border, assessing the damage, but it's substantial, it's bad. We are still early in the process, but we have co-op crews working across the state to restore power. We've called in help from places across the country, mostly in the southeast. We expect to be working around the clock this weekend and well into next week to restore power. Keep in mind, our co-ops serve some of the most rural areas and rugged parts of the state. In order to safely restore power, our crews have to inspect every mile of line. and that takes time, so please be patient. Our materials and equipment suppliers, just like our crews, are having to cut their way in and cut their way out to get equipment to the places it needs to be. It takes time to do this safely. Just this morning, we had trees fall on 2 trucks that were out trying to restore power. Luckily, the people were safe, but that tells you just how safe we need to be. The workers were okay in both cases. We're still early in the restoration process. We're going to work until the power is back on, and we need your help. Please be patient. Please be understanding with the folks that are out working. They're doing everything. We are doing everything we can. And finally, I'll end with this. I want to thank everyone behind me, particularly Office of ORS, Keller, Jimmy, Mike. It takes all of us working together. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Also, finally, Director Myra Reese, South Carolina Department of Environmental Services.
All right, thank you, Governor. The team at Department of Environmental Services is working very closely with all of our state agencies and with county officials. And I wanted to share some of our priorities that we're looking at. Beginning with dams, we continue to be in very close communication with our county emergency managers. They've been provided our dam safety program hotline number and also our emergency response phone number as a backup way to contact us. They also have access to all of our emergency action plans for dams in their area, and that's so important to provide the details. What are those worst case scenarios if we were to have a breach? Who could potentially be impacted and who needs to be notified? We actually received 7 calls to our hotline to date, and I'm happy to say at this time no breaches have been reported, although because of the huge amount of flow and precipitation, we have had some reports of overtopping and significant flows. We also are planning our post-storm inspections for dams that will begin either this afternoon or tomorrow. That's the high hazard dams that received more than 8 inches of precipitation, and we want to make sure that we're getting out there and deploying as soon as it's safe to do so, and look at those assessments to see if we have any necessary actions. One thing that I will say this, that based on that trigger level, we'll be assessing more than 200 dams over the next couple of days. I do want to give you some situational awareness, just as we have to pay attention to the level of rainfall that occurs in North Carolina. We also need to be very alert and cognizant of things that might be going on with a dam, some of the dams in North Carolina as well. And just recently, we probably in the last couple of hours have heard from our colleagues up in North Carolina that they are watching very closely the Lake Lure Dam, and what they went ahead and did or doing in the process of doing is doing some evacuations. And so right after this press conference, Chief Kill, Secretary Powell, and I will be on the phone with the state of North Carolina. And what we're going to be talking about, I mentioned those emergency action plans. We already have a copy of that emergency action plan, which really is the worst case scenario if you had a breach at Lake Lure, and what it's called an inundation mapping. And what would be structures and homes, bridges, all of these things that potentially could be impacted from a worst case scenario. And so what we're going to be doing is reviewing that model, ask North Carolina questions, but our initial preview of that, that plan does not really indicate any impacts to South Carolina. I think the important thing here is there's 53 river miles from that dam to the border of South Carolina, and there's also it would take about 13 hours. But we're going to be overly conservative looking at this and see if there's any occupied structures along the Broad River in Cherokee County that Chief Kill and some of the county officials will help us make some notifications. As far as drinking water facilities, we're not aware of any issues that are causing disruption of water services to customers at this time. As far as wastewater, we've only had 2 reports about operational status of some of our wastewater facilities. Wagner Wastewater Treatment Plant in Aiken County is partially offline, and then the Oconee Joint Regional Sewer Authority reports some overflows in Oconee County and have made the appropriate notifications. As far as the coast, we're not receiving any reports of damage to structures, some of the beachfront structures, but we will continue to be looking to get that information. And then private well owners, we're already getting the word out to folks, especially those in the upstate that had the heaviest rainfall, to monitor your private wells. Please reach out to us. We'll make sure you have the contact information, and we'd love to assist you with any testing or answer any questions that you have. Thank you, Governor.
Reese. All right, does anyone have a question?
Governor,
Sir.
do you have an estimate of when you think all power should be restored in South Carolina?
I'm sure someone has, can give a general estimate, but we know that it's gonna be a while. And this hurricane, we're not talking about houses being washed into the ocean or thrown back into the creek and all that sort of stuff. This is something different. This is power lines down in a part of the state that we usually don't have this kind of weather.
It's unusual, Governor. You would think by midweek we'd like to be able to have power back to everybody that can have power midweek of next week. Now, when I say have power, you bring up a great point. If your weatherhead, your service going to your house, has been pulled off your house because of a tree, and it's the service line going to your house, you need to call a qualified electrician to come back and repair that weatherhead as well as your meter can, and then we'll come back and put your line up. A lot of times those drag on for an extended period of time, so we always like to say to all the people that can receive power from that standpoint, you know, we've started out, like I said before, with 386. We restored 100,000 customers so far, and we hope to continue to make progress, but you're eventually going to get into neighborhoods and it's going to slow down to a crawl. So don't expect to see the numbers dive as they're doing today. So that's kind of my estimation. Jimmy and Mike may have a different scenario, but we're about the same.
Yeah, I would say something very similar. It's a little bit difficult to predict as we sit here right now with the storm having just exited the system in the last couple of hours. We'll have damage assessors getting out in the field and really seeing what we're holding. Or the upstate, we're not used to, for the Duke Energy Service territories, the PD, we often get storms of this magnitude. In the upstate, our customers there do not typically face this kind of damage, so it will take several days.
And obviously, I would reiterate the same thing. We're a little bit different in that the damage to our system was was mostly on our transmission system, and so we are working collaboratively with Rob Hostetler and the co-ops in the state, because we need to, as we restore those transmission lines, we need to do it in a thoughtful way and a safe way so that we know that the cooperatives are ready for that energy at that point in time. So we're going to work very closely with them. It's a very meticulous process, and so we too expect it's going to be a multi-day event.
Yes, sir.
I would just add one thing. That's an exceptional question, hard to answer until you've done your assessment. And so we're all in the assessment phase right now. And with the amount of trees that are down, it's hard to get the assessment done. But know that that's what we're working on as we're trying to restore power, is get an assessment, and probably a better question for a later time.
Next question.
On the power front, is there any concern, I know you've got crews coming in from out of state in different areas, but is there any concern on supplies as far as replacement components, transmission line, anything like that? Is that something you folks stockpile for a situation like this, or do you have to bring those in?
We do. We have what we call our storm kits. And so we go ahead and they're palletized, they're in our storeroom, they're set off to the side. We plan for this 365 days out of the year. And so they are quickly put on, has the very common fuses, wire, repair fittings, the whole 9 yards. They're already palletized, put on the 18-wheelers, head out of Columbia from our main storeroom and go to all of the crew quarters that we have throughout South Carolina. That's just experience that we've gained, and that really helps us from that standpoint. So not concerned about material at this point.
And I would say the same for Duke Energy. You know, when we come into hurricane season, we know it's likely we're going to get hit somewhere, and so we make sure that we have the materials and supplies that we need to respond to that. And at this point, not aware of any issues, but we'll continue to keep people posted.
Same story, same story. We have the material, all the material that we need. We've been doing a lot of consistent work on our transmission lines, and so we have a lot of that material available. Like these guys, we plan for storms, and so we will not have a material issue.
Any more?
Just, yeah, super quick. Co-ops, same way. The one thing the co-ops have done, though, co-ops cooperate, and that's how they gain scope and scale, and they own a supply company that's located right here in Columbia. So the supply company has plenty of supplies.
Next question.
Governor, do you have any more details on you mentioned the 4 deaths, but exactly the situation surrounding those deaths?
As far as we're able to tell at this point, all 4 deaths are traffic related. Of course, you know, there's still investigations that are ongoing with regard to those, but we're confident in saying they were traffic related.
Question for Kim. When you talk about communication losses in some of these counties, I know you're saying that you guys are in contact with them, but are we talking about cell phone towers being down? What's going on there? Like,
we've got the landlines we can talk to. We've got our local government radio if we need to. So we're in pretty good shape in terms of talking one-on-one with the counties. But internally, many of the cell towers lacking power, the generators in some cases where they have them, you know, potentially could need to be refilled and that sort of thing. So there's certain issues there, but we're getting there, I think.
Are any counties cut off essentially?
No, I don't think so.
What about hospitals when we talk about energy and power? Obviously they have
We also have a number of nursing homes and assisted livings, again, that are without power, but are running on generator and are providing care to their patients. That's part of what we do when we license them and we inspect them, is we check to make sure they have a good emergency plan, that they have working generators. So they are very, very well prepared and they are functioning normally at this time.
Those hospitals?
I can get you a list probably afterwards, but I do have a list I can send you.
As far as the downed cell sites, or the cell sites that are not operational, do you know which counties those are in or which areas?
No, I don't have good information on that at all right now.
Director Reese, what's the probability on that Lake Lure situation in terms of affecting, in terms of it actually happening?
I don't think anyone can really answer that. You really have to keep a close look at the current situation. I know that the state has been out there and has looked for signs of erosion, just things that would probably give them pause that a breach is a possibility. And they're not going to wait. They want to be very protective, take precautions early. And it may be a situation that they can go in and reinforce that dam, and it goes on a list to be repaired, or it may, you know, give them more confidence that, yeah, we need to keep this evacuation current for a longer time. So I'm sure the state of North Carolina is on top of it, and certainly we'll be having those kind of conversations with them.
When it comes to those Cherokee County notifications, are those notifications to evacuate, or are those just letting folks know that there could be a problem?
I think what we'll do is we'll get a better sense of the specific situation. We just very quickly pulled that plan out, and I think we identified about 15 probably homes along the Broad River, and they're probably already being vigilant and alert because of the floods. And you know, John had mentioned something to me that the Broad River is going to crest tonight, which that would be a good thing if we were to have a problem with this dam. And there's no guarantee that the entire impoundment would breach and release water. It could be a partial breach. There's just so many different factors with it.
Next question.
Governor, in past storms, you've directly addressed South Carolinians from that podium before the storm hits. Why didn't that happen in this case?
There was a lot of information, there's a lot of information out. Everyone was on alert, and it was very much covered in the news.
But from that podium in this specific setting, like with Debbie, for instance.
Well, we were satisfied that the information was out.
Did the trek surprise you? For John Q, for Governor McMaster, is that?
Yeah, we thought it was going to go more towards Atlanta, but these things are unpredictable. You know, there was I can't remember which year it was or which hurricane, but it was coming right straight at us, and then it zipped out into the Atlantic. And others have come towards us and then turned and go to North Carolina. This one was headed slightly away and then turned right into us when it got inland.
And that turn happened overnight, right?
Yes. Yeah, it was. I mean, we never know where they go. That's why we pre-position people all over the place to where it is likely to go in order to be able to respond immediately without having to move things after it happens. Anyone want to further on that? Kim?
Well, actually, one of the biggest success stories we've had is with the swiftwater rescue teams. And maybe Chief Jones can talk about that. But years ago, we did not do too much in the way of pre-positioning anything. We waited for the call. So maybe Chief Jones, you could see what you've revolutionized.
Thank you. Yeah, from the search and rescue perspective, we really lean on the counties to express to us what they anticipate their needs are. And so this being honestly a very different storm than what we have encountered in the past. Usually it's the upstate fire departments and search and rescue teams from those upstate counties that are sending help to the coast. And this time it was the coast sending help to the upstate. So we are in constant communication with the counties of what their anticipated needs are. We have a very robust fire service in South Carolina and search and rescue program in South Carolina. And so all of those teams are in play. And as I mentioned, in this case, all of our teams are in play, and we anticipate needing more help. So we've reached out to other states to provide search and rescue assistance. I was on the phone just earlier with the state of Louisiana, who we have gone repeatedly to help. And they're in the process of rostering search and rescue teams to send to help us in Louisiana, here in South Carolina. As we anticipate, this is going to be an ongoing operation as they have to get to every house that has a tree on them, make sure the people are okay, be able to provide stabilization to structures that may be unstable, and those sorts of situations. Fortunately, there wasn't as much of a need for swift water in this storm as honestly we anticipated. The wind damage honestly was very, very impactful, and so that's been widespread across, especially the upstate. But we've got all of those teams now positioned, stood up, and they're operating in the upstate.
One final point: you see all these different entities, public and private. You see how closely we all work together. But it's for that reason to allow, and that's a great thing. We call it Team South Carolina. But in order to allow, to facilitate the ease of working together, to eliminate any sort of log jams or technicalities, that's why I issued that executive order, that emergency declaration on Wednesday for this very thing. And I want to thank all of these people for working so closely together to minimize the damage. Any more questions?
Director Leach, how many people are on shelters right now?
There are 29 individuals in shelters at this point in time, but that number is changing every hour. But I think probably 35 has been our max at this point in time.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That's all.
Secretary Alex had a question. When it comes to road clearing crews, have you heard any information about areas that were hit the hardest in terms that were almost like hard to get through in terms of small towns and passable roads? Any areas that were really, really hit?
So I think what we've seen is, kind of to what Governor said, Director Stinson said, we've been preparing for this event. So we actually the initial forecast track was saying, heavy in the northwestern corner of the state, which is where is a heavy impact. We moved non-crews into that area as well. And then we've had folks at 24-hour operations. So we were positioned and ready for it. I think what we're dealing with right now, I think what the areas we seem to be reporting the highest amounts of trees down, Greenwood, Lawrence, Greenville, Spartanburg, Pickens County, those areas seem to be kind of the center of this. It tends to be a line basically from Gaffney down to Barnwell. If you go west, that seems to be our highest impacts in terms of road closures and trees down.
Do you have any idea in terms of like how many primary routes are still blocked, or are they all pretty much, is there anything you can point to?
So right now we're focused on the interstate system is kind of our first order of operations right now. We have some trees down on I-85 and the upstate, I-26 north of here in Columbia. We're going to be focusing on that today, getting those cleared, and then we're going to shift over into the primary routes. And then that's already underway and clearing on that. But we kind of follow that hierarchy I talked about earlier about clear the interstates, primaries, and then our secondary roads.
I have a question for you as well. In terms of the roads that are affected, are these sort of typical problem spots that storm to storm you guys keep going back to repair?
So what I would say is this storm is a lot of tree debris in the roadway. So it's not road washouts necessarily we're having, or bridges that are having issues. So it's been much more of this, and I would say based on what we've heard from our power partners, we use the power company outages to track where we know we have issues on the roadway. This is an unprecedented amount of debris on the roadway, so we're going to be working at it. But it is kind of across the upstate region.
In general, are there efforts to continue to improve quality of roads for other storms that may have more flooding and damage like that, not debris?
Yeah, in our 10-year plan, obviously when we upgrade a road, we're not building it back as it was, we're building it back better. So particularly on a bridge, we're planning for those flood events so that it's there in the future. So we build that effort to build our infrastructure in